The Hay Band Network.
Welcome to the Hay Band Network. Today we are going to talk about marching band in the era of COVID, and we have two fantastic guests with us who have actually in the month of June started some marching band activities in indoors and outdoors, and so we're going to kind of dive into this new world that we're dealing with. So I want to welcome Steve Aylward and Aaron Snipes III. Welcome to the Hay Band Network, guys.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks for having us.
So before we dig into what we all want to listen to, talking about how you've done band the last few weeks, let's kind of introduce everybody about your program. Aaron, we'll start with you. Talk to us about Braswell High School.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for having us. And Braswell High School is in Aubrey, Texas, up near Highway 380. We're in Denton ISD. So if you're familiar with Denton, we're about 30 minutes or 30 miles east of Denton. We are a new high school. I say that actually we're about 4 years old, so it's so new. But we're 5A last year, and this year we'll be a 6A school for the first time. So we are definitely growing. The band program started when I got there about 3 years ago. We had about 75 students. Then the next year we were 120. Last year we were at 180, and this upcoming year we're going to be at 230. So the band program is just constantly growing every year, and it's really exciting to see the culture that's being created in that area.
Very cool. And our other guest, Steve Aylward from Miamisburg, Ohio, at Miamisburg High School. Tell us about your program, a little bit about your setup there.
So we're in suburban Dayton, Ohio, about 10, 15 miles south of Dayton, in the southern suburbs of that area. We're at about a 1,500 9 through 12 high school. We are Class AA for BOA. We kind of go between Class AA and Class AAA. So we're in the largest division for Ohio, but nationally we're in the second smallest division. Our program, we're actually expanding to 4 high school concert bands this year for the first time. So we usually have about 220 students in our concert program. It's important, all of our other ensembles, marching band and our winter ensembles, are completely extracurricular. So they never rehearse during the school day. They're summer and evening ensembles only. So I'm going into my 20th marching season at Miamisburg, which is crazy to think about. This will be my 14th season as the director. I took over as the marching band director in 2007. We will be marching right now. We have about 192 signed up, and we generally run between 180 and 200, which is about where we've been for the last 5 or 6 years from a marching band enrollment perspective. We also are very active in the WGI Wins world. That's how Chad and I know each other. We've had a chance to know each other for the last couple of years through WGI, and most people know us for our Winter Guard. We have our Winter Guard is a 30-plus time WGI World Class finalist in the World Class division and a 3-time world champion back in the 90s. So, and we still have an absolutely outstanding color guard program. Heather Graham does just an extraordinary job with our color guard program.
So, well, thanks, guys. And so everybody gets an idea, we've got a couple different states represented here that have jumped into teaching in June. And so we thought it'd be great to get a different perspective on different parts of the United States of how people are doing marching band with all sorts of restrictions and guidelines and protocols and all sorts of stuff. So that's what we're here to talk about. Let's jump in. Steve, let's start with you. I know you've been going at rehearsals for several weeks. So just kind of talk about the structure of your rehearsals and your summer June camp.
Yeah, well, we got the last week of May, I got some information from our athletic department. One thing that makes Miamisburg unique compared to many other schools is that our extracurricular band programs and our guards are all under the umbrella of our athletic department. So my immediate supervisors are our athletic directors. And we were very quick on, we were following the Ohio High School Athletic Association's guidelines for that reason, because we're considered athletics. So the last week of May, we got some feedback from the OHSAA as far as what we can do to reopen. One thing that was, we had to put it together pretty quick because we found out that we were going to have a kind of a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 offering. You hear that kind of happening all over the country. and each of our activities at the school were going to be dealt with independently from each other. So when you started the clock for phase one, you had to do phase one for 2 weeks, phase two for 3 weeks or 2 weeks, etc. So we had to get together, we had to get started real quick. Our plan all along was for mandatory, the beginning of the season to start on July the 13th. We don't really have any, there is no, I know in Texas, there's certain rules on when things can start, and there isn't in that as far as band goes in Ohio. So we had planned to start July 13th. But for that to happen, we had to get through 6 weeks of phase opening, which meant we had to start on June 1st if we wanted to have any hopes of starting on July 13th. So we did 2 weeks of phase one, which was no more than 10 students in a group at any point, or excuse me, 9 students with an adult, 10 people, inside or outside, didn't matter. That was the largest group you could have for those first 2 weeks. So we did a lot of Google Form signups. You can use, there's an add-on called Choice Eliminator that I was able to do to keep students, like only 9 can sign up in a block. We did a lot of marching, like visual basics, and we called it was called skill training. That was the athletic buzzword. You know, football players could do skill training. They can't actually do football practice. So we had groups of 9 music, groups of 9 visual, through various parts of the week. And a lot of our instructors, Andrew Whitman, my brass caption head, Alex Catablu, my woodwind caption head, and Kendra Wendelin, my visual caption head, were very involved in that entire process. We also got some of our percussion going with Alex Beltran, our new percussion director, and Callahan Botha. And then, so we did that for 2 weeks. And then it expanded. These last 2 weeks have been still 10 students inside, so we try to avoid that, and 50 students outside. So we've been able to expand. And we just got word starting next week that we can go to any number outside and then smaller numbers inside, obviously, and we'll get into the social distancing and all of that. So we had a very regimented, detailed procedure we had to follow for each of those 2 weeks stretches in order to hopefully have anything resembling normalcy on July 13th, which is what we're still on schedule to do.
Okay. And Aaron, let's talk about what you all started at Braswell.
Yeah. Well, we had a camp, or I should say a preseason rehearsal scheduled for the end of May. And when we found out everything that happened, we realized that was not going to happen. And so we had to wait for guidance from UIL as to when we could and how that would actually look. But during that time, our district here, we were very kind of had a lot of forethought as far as when we go back, what we need and what PPE would the district have to be providing for. And so they were very, very much ahead of the curve on that. And so they had already purchased all the supplies that we would need. We just didn't know that it would happen as quickly as it did. And as soon as we got our UIL restrictions and guidelines, we knew that this was something that we felt very important, that we not just continue the virtual thing. We had a lot of students who were suffering mentally, and they were ready to come back, and parents, and so we said, well, let's give it 2 weeks and let's go ahead and have a set of rehearsals. And if students can't or don't feel comfortable coming, they certainly don't have to. We had online options for those students, but the students who would like to come back, they can come back. And so through those guidelines, not only from UIL, but also ABA and CBDNA, all of those guidelines that we read, we began to put down those practices, like the social distancing, and then having a smaller number inside and larger numbers outside. And so it was very successful for us, and it ran very smoothly. And I actually had more parents and students and even other band directors thanking us for doing that and taking that risk to make sure our kids had something that they could be a part of.
Yeah, that's great. And how long did you do that? Like a week, or how long was your camp this first?
Our those first couple of rehearsals was 1 week, and then we do one rehearsal each week until our end of summer rehearsals.
And I know things are changing by the week, so we're in the end of June. Are you all still on schedule? Aaron, are you guys still on schedule right now?
Well, for us, and one thing I want to stress is the flexibility. I think we as band directors are going to have not only now, but either and even to the future. And so for us, we're even though we have weekly rehearsals scheduled, we take it week by week. For instance, I'm sure you heard here in Texas, there's been a spike, and the governor released something I think this morning or either yesterday saying only go out if it's essential. Well, we canceled our upcoming Tuesday rehearsal because at this point I don't think it's necessary for us to do that. So I think band directors, as we have had to do, is to be we have to be very flexible during this time. So we're taking it week by week, and we'll see what happens as we get more guidance from the state.
And Steve, you guys are still on your schedule, correct?
As of right now, yes.
Yeah. And we always take it one day at a time, right?
Yeah, I'll echo what Aaron was just saying. The flexibility, and it's been hard. It's been hard for me, and it's been hard for our parents. That part of it is a lot of directors go. I am incredibly neurotic when it comes to schedule. I mean, I posted this year's marching band calendar last October, and like that's in our that's the world our parents are used to. Everything's posted like for the season, and it doesn't change. And this has been a new experience for a lot of our parents. Like I posted next week's schedule about an hour ago, as we're doing this on Friday afternoon, because I just got our new guidelines from our athletic department yesterday, and then I had to shoot out to the staff, hey, what's your availability? What do we want to do? And then, I was able on a Friday morning to send out next week's schedule. And that's been kind of every week has been kind of like, just like Aaron was saying, everything's been very flexible and week to week as the policies change, and then what are we able to do? What do we want to do? We don't want to go too hard. We have to be smart about it and relate to all of what's going on, just like he was talking about with the expectations we're getting from our state. So it's definitely been different. It's in take our parents, a little bit of an adjustment time, and they're doing great. But it's definitely, I think flexibility is the ultimate word. And, just be ready for anything. We've had to cancel for weather, like we were talking about, which we never like that, you see all the memes, like, 6 feet of water and band directors, like we still practice it. Like, we can't do that. And it's such an adjustment for me. Like I can count on one hand in 14 years the amount of times I've canceled a practice for weather. It's going to happen a lot this year. It's just the way it is.
I mean, that's a great thing for everybody, and flexibility and all the directors out there. That's what we all deal with and have been dealing with since we shut down. I mean, every single person deals with that same thing and constantly adjusting schedules and guidelines and protocols. So let's jump into some of the safety things and the protocols to deal with social distancing that you guys have dealt with in maybe kind of gearing up for your camp, some things you had to do ahead of time. And then Aaron, I know you've got some stuff to share with us for beforehand, and then also once you kind of got into it. So let's kind of go through some of the things you did ahead of time to set up for the safety portion, the protocols, and kind of going through that for your camp.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to share a document that we sent out. And this was after we hadn't had numerous meetings with our fine arts department and the other directors in our district to come up with some guidelines, even just for our district. So this is what I sent out to my parents. I don't know if, can you see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so and basically it just kind of showed all the dates and our preseason rehearsal dates and how that was going to look. The schedule that we use, like normally for our schedule, we usually would go, 12 p.m. to 9 p.m., which is our typical rehearsal schedule during the summer. But because of all of this, we cut that down to only 4 hours. And so basically, we had different sections coming in at different times throughout the day. So percussion, battery in the morning, front ensemble was afternoon, and then color guard and winds were in the evening time. And we had them in different parts of the school, so they never really, really crossed each other throughout the camps. We structured it so that when woodwinds were outside, we had brass inside and so forth. So it was almost like a rotation. And then at the very, very end, we ended off with everyone doing PT on the football field where we could really distance. These were just some of the health and safety guidelines. So the biggest thing that we wanted to let our parents know that, hey, you don't have to come to this. This is totally optional. And we had something called Virtual Academy that went on alongside these rehearsals. And so what Virtual Academy is, if a student opts out for rehearsal or can't come or they don't feel comfortable, our section leaders the next day, they host almost like a camp just for those students per section. And so they catch them up on whatever they missed. They teach them new routines. They teach them any kind of concepts that we may have learned the previous day. And it's an everyday thing for those students. So it's like they're still involved, which was very important for me. Arriving, we told kids, band kids are always notorious for, I'm going to be early is to be on time, and to be on time is to be late. But like Steve said, we've had to kind of change some of the kind of ways we do band. So we told the kids, don't arrive early, only come at the designated time. And that was just so that we could kind of stagger that. And once they came, we had them take a temperature check. We had some parent volunteers. Luckily, our district allowed us to have parent volunteers that could help, and so that was immensely helpful for us. And so they did their check-in, and I'll go over exactly what that looked like. But we had sanitizers ready for all the kids throughout the entire rehearsals. We let them know there could be no sharing of any sort. Our water fountains, we shut all those down, so those things were just kind of different for us. Let's see. We talked about distancing in this, which I must say our kids did an amazing job. The first day, they didn't really know if we were taking it seriously, but after the first day, they were like, yeah, this is something that we are really taking seriously. And so they did an amazing job throughout the entire week. We didn't require students to wear gloves. However, they had to wear a mask when they were not rehearsing. It was imperative. Of course, we cut down on the greetings and salutations, which was a big I'm a hugger. I don't know how you guys are. I'm a hugger. I'm a, fist pumper and let's go. But that was something we kind of agreed that could not happen at all. And so we cut that down. And when they departed at the end of the night, they had to go straight to the cars. There was no congregating in the band locker. And let me just say something about that. We totally shut down our band locker. So no one, when they came on campus, they went straight to where they rehearsed. So they never had to come inside to even get anything unless they were one of the big sousaphones. These are just the screenings that we did, pre-screening. Of course, we did the temperature check, and then we had a set of on-site questions that we asked them. And these were some of the questions that we asked. And by the way, we did this every single day. We had a parent there and they documented not only the answer to each question, they also documented the student's temperature so that we always had a record of that for us. And these are just some of the, things about symptoms and if you are confirmed and all those good things. And luckily, we've had no students, since we've done this, no students have tested positive, and none of our students have been confirmed or anything. So we're very blessed in that regard. So that was just a quick overview of some of the things precautions we took. And yes, was it more work on us? Yes. Did we have to have more help? Yes. But was it worth it? Absolutely.
And what about for you all, Steve? Some of those guidelines, are there things different in Ohio that you've had to follow or similar?
Very, very similar. One thing our school did is we actually have a QR code kind of hung up around the school and in various places. We have one sitting on the music stand right when the students arrive. We do the temperature check. 100.0 is ours. I think I saw Aaron, yours 100.4. I mean, we're talking a negligible difference. If a student has over 100 degree, they're sent home immediately. So when they arrive, we have the touchless thermometers. We check their temperature, and then the students take their phone. They scan a QR code, and it immediately brings up a Google sheet or a Google form. Excuse me, a Google form that comes up, and then it has very similar questions to what Aaron was talking about that they have to answer. It's just they do it themselves, and basically tell me if any of these are going to be yes, you shouldn't even be here. And then have you been around anybody with COVID? No. Have you had a persistent cough, non-allergy related over the last week, things like that. They answer those. They have to punch in their temperature that we just told them, and then our athletic director, he audits it basically every day just to make sure. And there have been a few kids, and there were a couple kids early on in the process that misunderstood. Like I have a girl who has asthma, and she's like, have you been short of breath? And she put yes. Obviously not COVID related. So then I got an email very, very soon after from our athletic director saying, hey, can you follow up on this? And why did this girl put this? And I shot an email, and we got it worked out. And we did have one student who was feeling nauseous around. She didn't tell anybody. So that was a little bit of a panic. So we got in touch with her dad, and then we required her a doctor's note before she was able to come back. And she came and she got tested. She was negative, so she's able to return. But we were ready to enact plans, and we had all of the kind of a registration of everything that was going on. And kind of like what Aaron talked about, like it took to the second day, and the students had it. Like basically, they know now. They show up, they put their mask on, they know they have to get their temperature checked, they know how to do the Google form, and they're ready to go. Every now and then ours probably need a little more reminding about just the distancing, not out of any kind of, they're not trying to be rude or anything. They just genuinely forget every now and then, and like, hey, I want to go talk to my friend, and like, well, you can do that from 6 feet apart. So every now and then they just need some reminders of that, and every now and then a kid will forget, like they finish rehearsal and we could try to get on them by putting their masks on right away. Again, they're learning, they're getting better, they're doing a good job.
That's cool. Are there things within the rehearsal? I mean, obviously we're at a very different distance from player to player. Are there things within the rehearsal as people view this video that would think, okay, those are things I definitely wouldn't have thought about, dealing with music stands, dealing with equipment, pit equipment? It seems color guards are kind of in a place in a lot of places where every kid has their own equipment anyway, but Aaron, some of those challenges that kind of came up that are definitely different than the normal, what we know is normal.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we learned as we go, right? We got in there and we was like, oh yeah, we got to think about this a little more. But I think for the most part, we had already kind of thought through a lot of the things. One of the things that really helped us was putting dots down in our band room, which we normally do for 8 to 5 step, but now it was for 6 foot and 10 foot, so that we can say, make sure you're on your dots, and everyone knew exactly what that meant. And that helped a lot as we were setting up. Of course, we were able to fit, like all of our woodwinds for the most part in there, in the band room, but there were some concerns as far as listening, and I don't think any major concerns, but some of the things that we had to also think about were our flute players. And I'm sure you saw the pictures where we got the face shields for the flute players just because they're blowing over their tone hole, and so we wanted to make sure that we were totally protected, and they were totally protected. And at first they saw it and they were like, do you really think we have to wear this? I was like, yeah, it's cool. It's a cool face shield. And once they start to look at it as we're different, we're the flute players, we have all this fancy stuff, they actually looked at it with pride. And so it became a very positive thing for us. Another thing that we had to do was our spit buckets. That's something that had I thought about that before pre-COVID, I probably would have been doing it even a long time ago. But basically, we just got buckets and we put a solution in the buckets of water and sanitizing solution and disinfectant. And the section leaders each day, they were responsible for making that, and they put their bucket. So every section had their own bucket. Only the section leader could touch it, and they would go and they would just put those buckets out. And so during practice, when they need to empty the water for the brass players, they would walk over, empty the water in the bucket rather than empty it on the ground. And so that was a great thing. And one last thing that we had to think about were also our music stands and how that would happen as far as sanitizing those. And basically what we did with that is we just went by and we let a student get one of the wipes, and they just wiped down. They couldn't leave until their entire music stand was wiped, and we let it dry. And we did that every block. We just make sure all of our equipment was always wiped down and sanitized.
And how about you all, Steve?
Oh yeah, similar. Again, the biggest thing you're just going to have to go over is just, yeah, nobody touches anybody else's equipment. You have your equipment. And I think the biggest area, in the area we're still brainstorming solutions, especially when school gets started, is with percussion. For how many people touch the concert bass drum mallet every day? And it's not like you're going to go buy a big concert bass drum mallet for every student. So those are the conversations we're starting to have on how we're going to sanitize that. The triangle beaters, I mean, things like that you don't even necessarily think about. Fortunately for marching band, a lot of times, at least even in percussion, once we get the kids, right now for every rehearsal, you stay on the same drum with the same mouse. We're still kind of setting our line, and then once the line's set, you have your drum with your sticks and then they're the only ones touching it. Marimba mallet, same general idea. One thing, just for somebody who's getting ready to start and planning, that like we didn't even think about, and we're dealing with the same thing with music stands and sanitizing, but we also all of a sudden realized we don't have enough music stands. So for every year when we have about 150 kids playing instruments, we don't have 150 music stands, which every other year before isn't an issue because kids just share music stands. And that's all of a sudden we were out in music rehearsal, and I had a Barry sax player putting her music on top of her case so that she could, because we were out of stands. So, just yesterday we brought over like 75 music stands. I had a parent meet me with the truck from our middle school for at least the rest of the summers, because we need 75 more music stands than we normally have. So that's just something you might think about. Like, it never even crossed my mind because it's never an issue. We have 90, 100 music stands. 50 kids share, the flute section shares a music stand normally. That's no issue. But we can't share. We're 6-8 feet apart from each other. That's an impossibility this year. So that's something that, if you have more band students than you have music stands, are you thinking about solutions for that right now? Obviously, we have to figure out something else when school starts, because we have to take our middle school stands back to the middle school. But at least it's going to get us through the next 6 weeks.
And you see recommendations on each kid having their own stand, but that's an extra thing that gets transported, and if they can, great, and if not, being creative with solutions too.
Bring their own.
Either way, yeah. What about percussion? I mean, you kind of talked about the isolated ones, the concert bass drum, and the ones where we only have a couple bass drum mallets, or one bass drum mallet, one concert bass drum. What about the marimbas? I know you guys both have percussion people that help out. What are some things they did for those equipment? Did they just stay on them, or did the kids rotate or clean them in between sessions?
Well, we just had our kids. Yeah, we just had our kids stay on them. They just stayed on their instrument, and that was theirs. I know everybody. We're fortunate that we have enough instruments that we can do that. That may not be the case, across the country, but if you can, that's totally, the best thing for the kid to just stay on their own instrument.
Same for now. Again, that's easier for marching band for us than it is for. We're really nervous. We start concert band the first day of school. So one thing we're kind of brainstorming right now, I know several companies, we're a Vic Firth school. My percussion director is a Vic Firth artist. So one of the things we're already brainstorming is Vic actually sells, similar to what they do for beginners, high school stick packs. So basically what we're gonna be asking all of our percussionists to purchase. You get a stick bag, you get your own set of snare sticks, and you get your own set of mallets. That is theirs, which is something we've never done before. We have the concert percussion in the back of the room, and all the mallets are in it. But there's really nowhere, again, we have 4 concert bands this year, and if 2 kids play a marimba each class during different parts, you're talking about eight kids are playing that instrument one day, and it might not be possible to sanitize it every time. So that way they're using their own stuff. And then we'll deal, like we talked about a minute ago, we'll deal with the big stuff kind of on a case-by-case basis, the timpani mallets, the concert bass drum, gong mallet, things like that.
So what are some things that you've done? I know, Aaron, whenever you go back, what are some things that you will change or adjust based off of what you've learned in the first week?
Yeah. One of the things that I want to do, even though my kids are great, they've really been, shout out to the Braswell band kids. And let me just say this, if I may, I think culture is everything, and building the kind of culture where you can say to the kids, wear your mask and distance, and they'll do that out of respect of, you know, the everything that's going on and respect of each other. I think that's very, very crucial. And so one of the things I would like to do, even though they're really good with the mask, um, I think the next time I want to get some kind of surgical tape and tape the top part of it right here so that it stays on their face, and a lot of times the mask would slide down, and so their nose would expose, and you know they were still breathing it in. But I want to have some kind of way to hold it up, and so when they play the instrument, they would just lift up the bottom of it, and their nose would still be covered, and they would just have their, you know, their mouth open. I want to experiment with a couple of kids on that first, just to see how it works and how the comfort level. But I think that would help them because it will keep the mask on the face, and they don't have to keep transferring it up and down throughout the rehearsal. Another thing I want to do is just put more of those distancing dots on the ground, put that in the hallway, because a lot of times, you know, when students would walk, again, like Steve was saying, you know, they didn't do it in a malicious way, but as they were walking from place to place, they would be 4 feet apart. You know, they would be a little too close for comfort. And so I want to put more of those dots down and more reminders around the band area to remind them of that distancing.
And Steve, you guys have been at it for 3 or 4 weeks, and so you've probably modified things as you've gone through. What are some of those things you've adjusted from when you started?
Yeah, just making sure. I think more as far as staggering when they arrive, how we do the check-in process. Like Aaron talked about, getting more visual reminders all over the place to really kind of assist them. We just as far as how do the drummers get equipment, things like that we've been able to streamline, doing it in smaller chunks. Even if we had like we ended drumline rehearsal and 3 and 4 students at a time put their equipment away, whereas the first couple of times we just dismissed, which led to a clump in the percussion storage room, you know, things like that you weren't even really thinking about. And then just really staggering how we come and go from places and how we do that, I think is incredibly important. So yeah, definitely in agreement, but just, yeah, more visual assistance for the students, I think is really important.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear that, because that's not something we hear people talk about in preparation. You put some out, but to hear both of you say that we just need a lot more. And, you know, kids are creatures of habit. They've done it this way for so long, and now it's just not intentional, not malicious, like you said, but it's just the way they are and what they know, and changing behavior is always a challenge. But band kids are good for that too. They're up for it usually.
Absolutely.
So what's your response from your parents, Ben? And Aaron, you mentioned it earlier. Steve, what have your parents kind of said about this now that you've kind of gotten through it? Have you had more kids join up? Have you had kids, has that attendance type stuff changed?
It's been overwhelmingly positive. I'll stress that so far all of our rehearsals have been voluntary, 100% voluntary. In the same way with athletics up here. So if we have some students who haven't been able to, some who just haven't chosen to. I can tell you it's been overwhelmingly positive from parents and students. I know you had Dr. Wes Pendergrass on your show a couple weeks ago, and he and I talked a week or two ago. He started working with a group in Arkansas, and the first couple times, I know Aaron, you'll say the same thing. Like, I knew the students needed this. I knew they missed it. I wasn't prepared for how much they needed this.
Absolutely.
Anything resembling normalcy. And just how much they craved it. I knew it was going to be a lot. I wasn't prepared for how much the kids needed this and just how appreciative they've been. Like, you know, we do an hour and a half of conditioning and body work and everything, and they're just like, oh my god, I'm so happy to be doing this. And like, never in a million years, like, that's just not stuff you would normally hear. And the parents, and I know it's a lot of work. It's a lot of extra. I'm doing way more work in June than I probably ever have from this. And then parents are just, thank you for all you're doing. I get that so much. I would say we've probably, for 100% voluntary, I would say we average in a week 70% of our kids are there. I would say about 80 to 90% of them have been to at least something. And a good chunk of the ones we haven't seen have at least reached out and said, hey, you know, a lot of times it might be a divorced parent situation where, like, student goes with mom or dad, the one they don't normally live with, for the entire summer until marching band is scheduled to start on July 13th. So we get an apology email like, hey, we're sorry we haven't been there. Our son's in Texas right now, with their dad, things like that. So, but just overwhelmingly positive. And it's been, I think, really great for the students just to see each other and to see the staff. Like, a lot of our instructors, they don't see them a lot after marching band season. So they haven't seen these people since November. And just to be around those people they love, and we call it the band family. And I know that's a very common phrase. And just to be around the family again, it has been so wonderful to see.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to add to that. Like, I thought when I was putting out all these guidelines and restrictions, I'm like, oh gosh, these kids are going to hate this. They're not going to want to do this. Every day it's going to be less and less. And it was actually the opposite. Every day it was more and more. And I think once parents saw like, oh, wow, they are really holding these kids to this, because we invited our parents at the end of every rehearsal, come out to the field, and come watch how we're doing this. And when parents started to come out and they saw it, they were so appreciative. I got those same kind of emails that just said, thank you for doing this. This is giving hope. And, and really during this time, I got to tell you, mental illness and mental health of our students is so important. And I know COVID is just as important. I don't, downplay that at all. But also those kids being inside and not being able to come out and not being able to see that normalcy. I saw it at the end of the school year where it was a downward trend for students with mental health issues. And so what I've seen from this and doing this the right way, I've seen my kids more energetic, more happy about life, more happy to be back, and ultimately more excited to make music, which is what it's all about.
Cool. Very, very cool. Any highlights from your sessions? Maybe that was it, just being around the kids. Any other highlights from these sessions that your takeaways on that?
Yes, I have one. The first note that the kids made, I think I cried a little bit. It was the first time I had heard actual music in about 3 months, and kids actually playing their instruments in the same room. And I think I cried a little bit, and I could see the tears, from the students that really touched them. And so just that one moment, and it was a concert F that was not all the way in tune and that was not balanced, but just to hear and see the kids in the same place making music again, that was therapeutic for me, and I think for the kids as well.
Anything, Steve, from your session since you've been doing this for a while?
Yeah, well, I agree with everything Aaron said. Everything he said, I completely agree. Just to take a different spin on it, it gave me an even greater appreciation for the people I'm blessed enough to work with. The one joke I always make is, the one thing I'm absolutely arrogant about as a band director is that I'm able to hire really good people. Nobody does that better than I do, because in my opinion, I have the greatest staff around. And the fact and the energy that these professionals have had, I think they've been just as enthusiastic and passionate about and dealt with the same withdrawal effects that our students did. And my staff has just dove into this passionately and head first. And they couldn't, it just watching their enthusiasm radiate through our students, because a lot of times I'm running around doing 18 different administrative things. So, the caption heads are running a lot of the rehearsals, and just their excitement level about this, and watching, our visual people, Kendra Wendell, I mentioned her earlier, Nate Catablu, just diving into these rehearsals, and they're coming up with these passionate lesson plans and like, hey, we're going to do this, and this. And there's so much energy. And then that feeds into the kids, and the kids see it, and then they get excited. And it's just been so awe-inspiring to see just how much energy and enthusiasm that the parents, the staff, the students have all had as a group diving into this.
All right, that's awesome. I mean, that's great for people to hear the stuff that comes with this, and all the work and the payback a little bit for the extra work that you guys are doing to make this happen. And we all know that there's no one fix for all. It's not the way everybody sees it. Not everybody feels this is the way to go. Everybody's in a very different situation, their community, their administration, and their state too. It's all very different in what we see. And just listen to you two guys. I mean, you're making it work, but it sounds like things are a little different in Ohio than they are in Texas. And just making the most of what you can and as safe as you possibly can.
Absolutely. Can I say to that as well that I think that's totally correct that everybody's different and there's not a one size fits all, and what could work in my community and where I am maybe not work in other communities. I think, just you have to look at your number one, put student safety first. Whether you come back or not, put student safety first. You have to look at your stakeholders in your community. Are they going to be supportive? Your administration, all of those. Is this something that they support? I think you have to look at your families, your parents, and see if this is something that they could want to do. But I think finding out what is that balance between all those different people, I think it's crucial in this, and realizing you don't have to do this. It's totally optional for anybody. But I will say, once we start school, I mean, there's going to be some kind of guidelines that are going to have to be in place. And I think this is worth us having this discussion now to see and to throw around ideas. So I appreciate you, Chad, for hosting this, because I think it's invaluable that we kind of share what has worked for us.
That's so important.
Yeah, exactly. And just be prepared to whatever your situation is. Take all of that information that Aaron just talked about, and find what works for you. Aaron, I saw a lot of the pictures from yours, and I might have the world's greatest staff. I don't have the world's greatest facilities. I looked at the facilities you were practicing. I'm like, yeah, that'd be awesome. I don't have that, and that's okay. Every school, every situation is different. So we've made adjustments. We're basically, if we can't practice inside, we can't practice outside, we're probably not practicing that day. And that's what we have to do. You were able to, you were able to safely and do everything inside. Fantastic. I mean, that's awesome. We're in a situation where that might not be doable for us. So another director, you might be in a similar situation to me where it's only going to be outside. But, when the full marching band season started, I have 3 fields I have access to. That's a plus for me that we can make that work, and we can do drill on 3 different fields if the state decides that we can only have X amount of students in certain times. So we're prepared, and we've brainstormed as many ideas, and just like we talked about, and then, your community and parents are going to be different. They're going to have different expectations. So just take all of the information you have and move forward. But I would really advise, just don't, it's so easy. And I think all of us kind of went into it a lot in the spring, just go into shutdown mode. Whatever, you have to just keep pushing forward and giving your students as many opportunities as you can. And it's so easy just to say, hey, we're done, it's COVID exists. I'm not doing anything this fall. I just don't think that's a beneficial experience for any of our students. Maybe you're just doing virtual things. Then be doing that. Yeah. I think all of us kind of owe it to our students. Like Aaron talked about their mental health. They need us right now. Mm-hmm. And anybody else that, maybe it's your drum instructor, maybe it's your guard instructor. All of our students have at least that one adult, somebody in our program that they really miss right now. So let's give them every opportunity we can.
Man, that's great advice. Any shout outs you guys want to give? We kind of wind this thing down. Aaron, start with you.
Yeah, well, I want to first of all give a shout out to my staff. I'm like Steve. We can argue over who has the better staff, but I believe I have the best staff in the world. My assistant director, Taylor Sitzman, who is just incredible. He's been my, right-hand partner on this and helped make it happen. Our percussion director, Alan Miller, who's been great. Our color guard director, just all of our staff members who work with our kids. Also, I want to give a big shout out to Denton ISD, and that's the district that I am in. Dr. Jamie Wilson, Dr. Jeff Russell, our fine arts director, Dr. Jackie DeMont-Mullen, and Eddie Russell. These people, they have been incredible throughout all of this. They've been patient where they needed to be patient, and they've moved forward when they needed to move forward. Our superintendent with the graduation things, as I looked across the state and the country, there's so many people just canceling graduation, and our superintendent said, we're going to be patient and we're going to see what happens, and we're going to be innovative. And we had our graduation at a racetrack where people could distance, but that was just a proof that they really know how to make things happen in a safe place. So shout out to Denton ISD, Jackie DeMont-Mollin, Eddie Russell, our Braswell administration. My principals have been incredibly supportive to us all. And honestly, we could not do this without all of their help and support.
Yeah, kudos to you too and your staff for making that happen for the kids and following the guidelines and getting a lot of positive feedback in the process too. Yeah. Steve?
Yeah, my right-hand man, Ryan Wintersheimer, is just right along on the ride with me, helping facilitate. I mentioned a lot of our staff earlier. They just continue to do a great job. Like I mentioned, our athletic directors, Jason Osborne and Jason Shade, have just been incredibly supportive. Our entire city's school district administration, Dr. David Vale, Steve Homan, really just continue to encourage all of our students, and the fact that that we are considered equals with all of our athletes and all of the other students and given equal billing continues to resonate in everything that we do as an ensemble and as an activity. And and again, just all of our staff members, Heather Graham, Alex Beltran, Callahan Botha, Alex Catablu, Nate Catablu, Delaney Linkhart, I'm sure I'm leaving some, Alex Welch, Andrew Whitman, I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. Drew Gillum, there, I forgot you. But all of you, I love every single one of you guys.
Very cool. And so thank you both for joining us on the Hey Band Network. It's been great to listen to you talk about trying to do marching band and our new rules and guidelines. So really appreciate you coming on today.
My pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you for having us.
And so for anyone out there, I'm sure if you have questions, reach out to these guys. You can find them on social media, or probably find them through their email, through their campus. If you have questions how to do this, they've been great in sharing a lot of information today, but I'm sure they're willing to help you out, or, hey, what about this? I said, for everybody out there, just keep up to date with your state guidelines, whatever your state system is providing, and then with your school district. And there's a lot of school districts trying to find avenues to make something work, whatever that is, and just be supportive of each other and learn from each other. And that's why we brought this session on today, is to get a taste of what's possible out there and how people are making it work and how different it is, and how rewarding it can be. So thank you for sitting through this Hey Band Network session. If you want to see any other videos, check out our Hey Band Network YouTube channel for this and other videos. Thank you very much.